Russian President Vladimir Putin held a high-stakes meeting in Moscow with a senior delegation from the United States, including Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Senior Advisor Jared Kushner, to discuss potential terms for ending the conflict in Ukraine. The meeting included Kremlin Presidential Envoy Kirill Dmitriev and Foreign Policy Aide Yuri Ushakov, and took place just after the Russian leader issued severe warning to European governments regarding their involvement in the war. President Putin accused European leaders of deliberately sabotaging peace efforts led by President Donald Trump by inserting demands into proposals that Moscow views as absolutely unacceptable. During his address to officials before the arrival of the American diplomats, the Russian president claimed that European capitals have no peace agenda and are actively siding with continued warfare to maintain their global dominance. He warned that if European nations choose to escalate the conflict or provoke a direct confrontation, Russia is prepared to respond immediately with overwhelming force. The Kremlin leader stated that any war with Europe would be very brief and suggested that the defeat of European powers would be so absolute that no one would remain to negotiate a peace deal later. These comments have created a tense atmosphere as the United States administration attempts to broker a ceasefire through intense shuttle diplomacy between Kyiv and Moscow. Analysts observe that while Washington is pushing for a negotiated settlement, European officials remain skeptical and fear that a hasty deal could compromise security on the continent. President Putin insisted that Russia has no plans to attack Europe unprovoked, but stressed that his military force stands ready right away if hostilities are forced upon them. The meeting with Witkoff and Kushner marks a pivotal moment in the four-year war as the new administration in the White House seeks to fulfill campaign promises of ending foreign conflicts quickly. While diplomatic efforts continue in the capital, the Russian president also addressed the nation regarding the economic war being waged by Western powers. President Putin declared that the illegal, one-sided restriction and sanctions imposed by Western nations have failed to crush the Russian economy or alter its sovereign policies. He emphasized that the country has coped effectively with external pressure and is now pursuing an economic strategy driven strictly by national interests and strengthened partnerships with major powers like China and India. This declaration of economic resilience coincides with a report from the Federal Security Services, which announced the thwarting of a Ukrainian assassination plot in Crimea. Russian security agents stated that they prevented an attack on a senior defense ministry officer by intercepting a saboteur attempting to plant explosive under a vehicle. The security services identified the mastermind as Rustem Fakhriev, who is alleged to be a Ukrainian intelligence officer working with foreign support. Authorities claim to have seized Western-made explosive components and communication devices during the operation, which also resulted in the death of one agent and the detention of a local accomplice. Moscow officials described this foiled attempt as part of a wider pattern of sabotage and terrorist activities targeting Russian officials in occupied territories. The incident has been used by the Kremlin to justify its continued military operations and to reinforce the narrative that Ukraine is engaging in terrorist tactics rather than conventional warfare. Tensions have also spiked dangerously in the maritime domain after reports emerged of attacks on oil tankers in the Black Sea. Two vessels identified as the Mid-Volga and the Gambian flag Virat were struck by naval drones near the coast of Turkey, causing alarm in Ankara and across the region. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan condemned the strikes as a worrying escalation that threatened regional navigation safety and warned that such actions risk dragging neutral nations into the conflict. Ukrainian security sources confirmed the use of baby naval drones to strike what they describe as vessels belonging to the Russian shadow fleet used to evade oil sanctions. In response, President Putin accused Ukraine of engaging in outright piracy and issued a stark ultimatum during a press conference. He warned that Russia is prepared to implement a three-tier escalation plan if these attacks on merchant vessels continued. This plan could involve direct strikes on Ukrainian port facilities, targeting ships entering Ukrainian waters, and in the most severe scenario, completely cutting off Ukrainian access to the sea. The Russian leader stated that previous retaliatory operations against ships delivering military equipment were far more effective than the current strike by Kyiv. The situation in the Black Sea remains volatile as Turkey attempts to mediate and prevent further violence within its exclusive economic zone, while ensuring that commercial shipping lanes remain open despite the ongoing hostilities. On the ground, in eastern Ukraine, Russian forces have reported significant territorial gains, including the full capture of the strategic logistic hub of Pokrovsk, which Moscow refers to by its Soviet name, Krasnoarmysk. The Kremlin released footage of President Putin wearing army fatigues and visiting a forward command post to receive battlefield briefings from top generals who claim that Russian troops are advancing on virtually all fronts. Military commanders reported that thousands of Ukrainian soldiers have been encircled in the northern pockets of the city and that mopping up operations are underway to clear remaining resistance. The fall of Pokrovsk would represent a major blow to the Ukrainian defense lines, as the city serves as a critical junction for supplying troops across the Donbas region. Russian officials also claim control over Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region, signaling a broadening of the offensive. President Putin praised his troops for confidently maintaining the initiative and stated that these victories would accelerate the fulfillment of the goals of the special military operation. Meanwhile, Ukraine has not officially confirmed the total loss of these cities, but soldiers on the front lines have described the situation as dire, with heavy fighting and a lack of manpower. In addition to the ground offensive, Russia has intensified its air campaign, launching massive waves of attack drones and missiles targeting energy infrastructure and civilian areas across Ukraine. President Vladimir Zelensky reported that Moscow is applying immense physical and psychological pressure on the population to break their resilience before any potential peace deal is finalized. In the Western Hemisphere, geopolitical friction has intensified between the United States and Venezuela, adding another layer of complexity to global international relations. President Donald Trump has ramped up pressure on the government of President Nicolas Maduro, accusing Caracas of facilitating drug trafficking and allowing criminals to migrate to the United States. During a cabinet meeting, President Trump sat alongside Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth and vowed to use military force, including missile strikes on land, to eliminate drug smuggling operations. The American president used harsh language to describe the traffickers and criticized the previous administration for failing to secure the southern border. In response, President Maduro organized a rally outside the presidential palace, declaring absolute loyalty to the Venezuelan people and swearing to defend the nation's sovereignty against foreign aggression. The Venezuelan leader has received public support from President Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping, signaling that the South American nations has become a foothold for Russian and Chinese influence in the region. Former White House officials have warned that the struggle represents a larger geopolitical contest for dominance in the Caribbean. Tensions are further strained by the deployment of United States naval assets near the Venezuelan coast and threats to close airspace. The confrontation highlights the aggressive foreign policy stance of the new administration in Washington as it seeks to assert control over regional security issues while simultaneously managing complex diplomatic negotiations in Europe. If you have made it this far, congratulations. You have a lot to try. I want to ask you a quick question though. With Vladimir Putin issuing stark warning to European leaders about absolute defeat while simultaneously meeting with U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, we are witnessing a bizarre duality of peace talks and war threats. At the same time, the Black Sea is becoming a new hotbed of conflicts with drone strikes on oil tankers, and tensions in Venezuela are drawing in U.S. military assets. Do you believe these diplomatic meetings in Moscow are a genuine attempt at a ceasefire, or are they merely a stall tactic by the Kremlin to consolidate gains like Pokrovsk before launching an even larger offensive against the West? And why? Join the debate. We want to hear your insightful opinion on where this is all heading in our community. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I appreciate your support. Thank you for being a part of this journey. Like the video, share this video with friends and family, hit the notification bell, and most importantly, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.